Diplomat's Archives. Hidden Stories. This is the 31st story. "75 years ago, on June 25, 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, sparking the outbreak of the Korean War. On the very day the war broke out, the United Nations Security Council convened in an emergency session. It condemned North Korea's military action as an act of aggression, threatening international peace, and passed a resolution calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities. When North Korea failed to respond, the Security Council adopted Resolution 83 on June 27th, urging member states to provide South Korea with the support needed to restore peace and stability on the peninsula. And thus began the participation of the United Nations Command in the Korean War, stepping in to support South Korea. At that time, a total of 16 countries participated in the Korean War under the UN flag. Among them, today we will explore hidden stories of the Dutch troops in the Korean War, as November 2025 marks exactly 75 years since their arrival in Busan. The year 1950, when the Korean War broke out, was just 5 years after the end of World War II. And the Netherlands, too, had suffered heavily from the war. So we met with the Dutch ambassador to hear firsthand what circumstances the Netherlands was facing at that time.
My name is Peter and I'm the ambassador for the Kingdom of the Netherlands to South Korea. So this was 1950 when the decision was made to send troops, and the country was still very much focused on rebuilding and reconstruction. And in fact, many people were sort of tired of war so soon after the Second World War. And they were really focused on their own livelihoods, on housing, on getting a job, etc., etc.
Even in that context, the Netherlands became the 4th UN member state to commit troops to the Korean War, sending a total of 5,324 army and naval personnel. Only a few years had passed since the end of World War II. So why did the Netherlands decide to send its troops into yet another war?
On the 27th of June 1950, of course, the Security Council adopted a resolution calling on all member states to come to the defense of South Korea and repel the attack from the north and to help restore peace. And the Netherlands government, 2 days later, answered that call and pledged its support to South Korea. So when the then Prime Minister Drees, when he explained the reasoning behind the Dutch decision, when he explained that in Parliament, he said something interesting. He said, all regions are connected, and if there's a threat to the peace, there should be immediate collective defensive action, of course, in line with the Charter of the United Nations. And I think that's very interesting what he said 75 years ago, because that still holds true today. The notion that the defense is interrelated and security is interrelated. And therefore we also should stick together. Like-minded countries such as the Republic of Korea, the Netherlands, should really stick together in defense of our own security.
The first to arrive on Korean soil were mostly members of the Dutch Navy. composed primarily of professional personnel. On July 19, 1950, the Dutch Navy entered Korea to support UN operations, taking on missions such as coastal defense, maritime patrols, and landing support. Meanwhile, back in the Netherlands, recruitment of volunteers for the ground forces was in full swing. And when the call went out for the first UN detachment, a remarkable 1,670 volunteers stepped forward. Of these, 636 were finally chosen and departed for Korea on October 26, 1950. We wondered, what drove so many young people to volunteer for the Korean War?
The Dutch government decided to put out a call to volunteers to go and fight in Korea. And what's interesting is that 2 days after the Dutch government put out this call in newspapers and on the radio, within 2 days, almost 1,700 people volunteered to go and defend South Korea. And over the course of the Korean War, more than 5,000 Dutch troops participated in the war. And I think that is very meaningful. Of course, the reasons that people volunteered, they vary. A lot of volunteers had previous combat experience, either in the Second World War or in the Indonesian colonial war. Some had difficulty readjusting, in society back home. Some wanted to pursue a military career, some were looking for redemption, and others, and this might sound strange, but others were looking for adventure. So there were various reasons why people volunteered, but I think the common denominator is that they really felt a strong commitment to come to the defense of South Korea under the banner of the United Nations.
And so, 636 Dutch Army volunteers set foot on Korean soil for the first time on November 23, 1950. Their unit was known as the Vanhoits Regiment.
Yeah, so they served in the unit, it was called the Vanhoits Regiment, a dedicated army detachment that was sent to Korea. And they fought under the 2nd US Army Infantry Division called Indian Head.
To learn more about the Dutch troops who served in the Korean War, our team went to speak with an expert.
현재는 지금 육군 군사연구소에서 육군사라고 하는 육군의 공식 역사서를 발행을 담당을 하고 있습니다.
Dr. Kim Young-hwan has also authored numerous research papers re-evaluating key battles and operations of the Korean War, including the Netherlands' participation in it.
네덜란드가 9월 9일에 636명의 신병이, 지원병입니다. 지원병이 모집이 되었고 그 인원들이 네덜란드 수도였던 헤이그에 있었던 뉴 알렉산더 병영이라는 곳에서 기초 군사훈련을 맡습니다. 그래서 10월 23일에 모든 훈련이 종료가 된 다음에 유엔으로부터 유엔군기를 이양을 받게 되죠. 그래서 이제 오우덴 소령이 그때 당시 대대장을 하시게 되는데요. 이분이 10월 23일에 훈련을 마치고 이 부대가 수송선이었던 주더 크루스호라고 하는 배에 승선을 해서 10월 26일에 암스테르담을 출발해서 11월 23일에 부산에 도착하게 됩니다.
The Dutch Vanhoits Regiment, which arrived at Busan port on November 23rd, later entered a UN camp in Daegu. After undergoing orientation and acclimatization training, they were assigned to the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division.
아무래도 당시 이제 미군이 지원이 돼서 한국 전선에 투입했던 시기였는데 병력 손실이 일어나는 만큼 미 본토로부터 미군이 지원이 되어야 되는데 그런 지원들이 적시적으로 이루어지지 못했기 때문에 아무래도 네덜란드 대대가 미 2사단 38년대에 배속이 돼서 38년대 전력을 보강하는 그런 임무를 부여받았던 것 같습니다.
Before being deployed to active combat, the Dutch troops carried out security duties throughout the Gyeonggi-do region. Then, in February 1951, as Operation Roundup by the UN forces was in full swing, the Dutch battalion was assigned the task of defending Hoengseong.
라운드업 작전이라는 것은 당시 이제 중공군 3차 공세가 끝나고 37도선 연하는 선으로 우리 유엔군의 전선이 위축이 되어 있고, 이때 잘 아시던 145대에서 서울이 피탈을 당하게 되죠. 그래서 이제 유엔군이 그렇게 중공으로부터 어떤 전쟁의 주도권을 되찾기 위해서 서부 지역, 경기도 서부 지역에서부터 위력수색 작전이었던 썬더볼트 작전을 펼치면서 중공군에 한번 간을 보는 거죠. 얘네들이 과연 얼마만큼의 준비가 되어 있는지, 얼마만큼의 전력이 지금 보강이 돼서 우리와 전투를 할 수 있는 준비가 되는지 한번 간을 한번 보게 되는데, 37도선을 넘어서 수원까지 갔는데 중공군이 없는 거예요. 뭐지? 보니까 중공군도 이미 3차 공세가 되면서 모든 공격을 할 수 있는 모든 힘을 다 써버린 거죠. 그래서 병력들이 서울 이북 지역으로 올라가서 복충하고 휴식을 취하고 있는 상황이었습니다. 그 사실을 간파했던 유엔군 사령관이었던 메가더, 그다음에 8군 사격단 리치웨이 장군이 동부전선을 중심으로 해서 반격 작전을 계획을 하게 되죠. 그게 라운드업 작전입니다. 그 라운드업 작전을 하는 그 어떻게 보면 전진 기지가 횡성이었고, 그 전진 기지였던 횡성을 방어하는 임무를 우리 네덜란드 대대가 받고 2월 4일에 횡성으로 이동을 하게 됩니다.
In January 1951, during the Third Offensive, the Chinese forces that had captured Seoul pushed the UN and Republic of Korea Army forces south of the Han River, moving their main units to the rear to reorganize. In response, the UN forces launched a counteroffensive on January 25, 1951. Operation Thunderbolt took place on the Western Front, securing key sections south of the Han River by early February. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the U.S. 10th Corps planned Operation Roundup. This operation was coordinated with Operation Thunderbolt on the Western Front, aiming to secure the line from the south bank of the Han River to Hongcheon and to create favorable conditions for the recapture of Seoul. Launched on February 5, 1951, Operation Roundup managed to secure limited objectives and control lines over about 5 days, but further progress was blocked by stiff resistance from communist forces. And in this process, the Dutch battalion played a crucial role.
당시 11월에 전황, 즉 전황을 한번 살펴보면은 중공군이 10월에 1차 공세, 11월에 2차 공세를 통해서 38석 이북 지역에 올라가 있었던 유엔군, 우리 국군을 포함한 유엔군이 큰 피해를 입고 정말 38선 인근 지역까지 전선이 위축되죠. 굉장히 좀 급박한 상황이었는데, 또 중공군이 12월에 3차 공세를 펼치죠. 크리스마스 공세라고 하는 3차 공세를 펼침으로 인해서 1월 4일에 서울이 피탈되는 굉장히 위급한 상황에 우리 네덜란드 대대가 와서 미군을 지원하는 임무를 수행하게 되었죠. 정말 한 사람의 전투병, 한 자루의 총이 정말 급박한 시점에 굉장히 사기가 있었고, 굉장히 전투력을 갖춘 새로운 부대들이 와서 좀 우리의 유기전쟁에 참전을 함으로 인해서 또 전황의 타격에 굉장히 큰 도움을 하게 됩니다. 당시 네덜란드의 투입은 중공군의 대규모 참전으로 인해서 큰 위기에 봉착했던 그런 당시 전황에 큰 힘이 되었고요.
In response to Operation Roundup, the Chinese forces were intensifying preparations for a new offensive. Their first target was the area around Hoengseong, where the Republic of Korea's 8th Division was stationed, disadvantaged in both mobility and firepower. And on February 11, 1951, at 5 p.m., the Chinese army launched their attack on Hoengseong. Despite giving their all, the ROK 8th Division could not overcome the numerical disadvantage. the situation was rapidly deteriorating for the South Korean forces. The early collapse of the RK 8th Division also impacted the supporting U.S. units. These units were forced to abandon artillery and vehicles, retreating along the mountain ridges toward Hoengseong. And it was in this critical moment that the Dutch battalion's contribution became particularly significant.
4차 공세의 죽음 방향은 약체로 판단했던 3개의 한국군 사단이 올라와 있었던 횡성 부근이 주공 부대로 결정이 되고 있는 부대를 싹싹 끌어모아서 당시 부사령관이었던 덩화에게 그 병력들을 몰아서 덩화에게 주공 방향에 대한 지휘권을 이양을 하게 됩니다. 그래서 그걸 등집당군이라고 부르더라고요. 등집당군이 공세를 했던 게 바로 4차 공세였고요. 그 4차 공세에서 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 8사단이 큰 피해를 입었어요. 등집당군의 작전적 목표는 약체였던 한국군을 완전히 소멸시키고 그 밑에 있던 2사단까지 소멸시킨 다음에 원주 지역까지 피탈을 해서 전선에 커다란 구멍을 만드는 거였습니다. 그런데 작전적 실패라고 얘네들이 판단한 이유는 횡성에서 네덜란드 대대가 너무 잘 막아줬어요. 12시간을 버텨줬습니다.
At that time, the Dutch battalion held the Hoengseong Bridge, a key route for the retreating frontline units, ensuring that the South Korean and UN forces could withdraw safely. Holding Hoengseong was no easy task. Fierce fighting continued throughout this period.
On the 12th day, at 21:10 hours, small arms fire was heard just northeast of the command post. The message operations officer came running towards the command post and informed the command officer that a column of about 60 men came marching down the road towards the command post. The combat force guard fired upon this column, but those men shouted, "OK rocks! OK rocks!" The firing stopped. Lieutenant Colonel Den Oden ordered Sergeant Packer of the S2 section to find out what troops it actually were. As soon as Sergeant Packer and his interpreter came near the road, they challenged the group. The interpreter heard them talking and shouted, "Sergeant, they're Chinese!" Immediately, the column started firing, and Sergeant Packer shouted, "Men, something is wrong!" Sergeant Packer has been missing since. Lieutenant Colonel Den Ouden ordered everyone to fall back about 20 yards to the position of the headquarters company. While he was giving orders, a hand grenade was thrown about 1.5 yards from where he stood, and the lieutenant colonel was mortally wounded. In this confusion, everyone was trying to make for the headquarters company area, but several got wounded because of enemy fire on the difficult approach, namely a very steep embankment.
In this way, the Dutch troops, despite the loss of their commanding officer during the battle, held Hoengseong until the early hours of the 13th, enabling the dispersed South Korean and U.S. forces to withdraw safely.
횡성교를 통해서 홍천 이북까지 올라갔던 8사단 잠정부대들과 횡성 이북 지역에서 8사단을 지원하고 있었던 미 38년대와 21 지원단이 횡성교를 통해서 무사히 횡성을 거쳐 철수를 해서 원주 북부의 방어선을 형성할 수 있는 12시간이라고 하는 시간을 네덜란드 대대가 벌어줬습니다. 그래서 그 덩집당군 입장에서 원주를 피탈했어야 되는데 원주를 피탈하지 못하고 원주 북방에 형성되었던 방어진지에서 막히게 되고 얘네들의 공세 한계점에 도달하면서 결국은 얘네들 스스로도 횡성에 있는 일부 부대들을 우리가 피해를 주긴 했지만은 횡성 지역에 있는 우리 한국군과 그다음에 미군 부대를 포위 섬멸해서 모든 병력들을 완전히 발소시켜서 원주까지 들어가는 작전적 목적으로 우리는 실패를 했다라고 얘네들도 평가를 합니다. 따라서 횡성전투에 대한 재평가는 그런 맥락에서 우리 입장에서도 굉장히 큰 피해를 입고 철수한 전투기지만은 중공군의 입장에서도 작전적 목표를 이루지 못했던, 그래서 원주 지역을 지켜낼 수 있었던 전투로서 재평가가 이루어졌고 네덜란드 대대의 그런 감투 정신을 발휘해서 초수했던 병력들의 엄호 작전을 수행에 따라 원주를 지켜낼 수 있었던 굉장히 중요했던 전투라고 판단할 수 있습니다.
So the Battle of Hoengseong was the fiercest battle that the Dutch regiment, the Van Heus regiment, fought. It took place in February 51, and the Dutch regiment took the most casualties during the war. I think 15 Dutch soldiers died, including the commander of the regiment, Lieutenant Colonel Den Ouden.
An hour's drive from Hoengseong brings us to Suwon, and here we can find a site with a special connection to the Dutch Battalion, one that dates back to before they entered full combat.
It's interesting also that after they arrived in Busan, they went to, 2 weeks later, they were in Suwon, and they were exhausted, the troops, and they were actually housed in the what is now called Samil School, that provided a refuge for the Dutch soldiers that had just arrived in Korea. And at the Samil School, they were given warmth and hospitality. And I think to this very day, we still have an excellent bond with Samil School for the warmth and the humanity that they showed to the Dutch soldiers.
The school just mentioned by the ambassador is none other than Samil Middle School, located here in Suwon. The predecessor of this school was Samil Hakdang, founded in 1902. Samil Hakdang later evolved into Samil Middle School, as well as nearby Samil Technical High School and Samil High School, and continues to operate to this day.
네, 저는 삼일고등학교의 교장으로 재직 중인 김기남입니다. 본교는 1902년에 선교사들에 의해서 남자 셋, 여자 4명으로 시작했고요. 그 이듬해인 1903년에 이하영 선생님께서 삼일학당이라는 이름을 지으면서 시작되었습니다. 1903년에 임면수 선생님과 이하영 선생님 등 독립운동가들께서 청년들이 배워야 나라를 구할 수 있다라는 일념으로 학생들을 가르치기 시작한 것이 본교의 시작입니다. 그 이후에 독립운동을 하러 만주로 가시면서 이 인근에 땅 2,000평과 또 밭 800평 등을 희사하시면서 저희 학교가 이제 성립이 되었는데요.
Samil Academy, with a history spanning over 120 years. Our team was able to spot a remarkable building here at Samil Middle School. This building is none other than the Adams Memorial Hall, and it is also the oldest Western-style building still standing in Suwon. The place just mentioned by the ambassador, the very space that holds a special connection with the Dutch soldiers, is right here.
서울로 올라가는 길에 삼일중학교에 인연이 되어서 주둔했다고 들었습니다. 그래서 그 주둔 기간은 1950년 12월 4일부터 22일까지 18일 동안 삼일중학교에서 먹고 자고 하면서 휴식을 취한 장소이고,
On December 4th, 1950, before being deployed to active combat, the Dutch troops arrived at Samil Middle School, where they stayed for 18 days. And even after the war, they continued to remember this place with special affection. However, Adams Memorial Hall was once at risk of being demolished.
건물이 낡아서 다른 용도로 쓰려고 철거를 하려고 했던 것 같습니다. 1985년에 참전용사 슈레더러스가 본교를 방문했을 때 철거 얘기를 듣고 이 건물을 철거하지 말아달라고 부탁하여서 지금까지 보존된 것으로 알고 있습니다.
In fact, it was a Dutch war veteran who saved Adams Memorial Hall from demolition. In this way, he met with the responsible officials, explained the building's historical significance, and persuaded them not to demolish it. In the end, the building was preserved and remains in its original location to this day. Today, the first and second floors are used as spaces for students. Yet here and there, traces of how this place looked 75 years ago still remain. And even to this day, many Dutch soldiers have not forgotten the warm welcome they received here. And over the years, Dutch war veterans have returned to this place several times. Not far from Samil Middle School, where the Adams Memorial Hall is located, stands Samil High School. And here, we were able to explore the History Hall, showcasing the rich heritage of Samil Academy. While exploring the hall, one display immediately caught our attention. It was a military uniform, specifically that of a Dutch soldier. This was personally donated by Dutch veteran Private Stahl, who stayed at the Adams Memorial Hall for 18 days, 75 years ago. He donated his uniform, medals, and service badge, leaving a message expressing his hope that these items would be preserved here for a long time. The connection between the Dutch veterans and Samil Academy doesn't end here.
네덜란드 제향군인회에서 본교를 1998년에도 방문을 하셨고 그 이후에 네덜란드 대사관에서 대사님이나 참사관님 이런 분들이 삼일중학교, 삼일고등학교, 삼일공업고등학교를 번갈아 가면서 방문하시고 장학금을 지급하는 그런 관계를 이어오고 네덜란드의 도움을 저희들이 잘 기억하고 또 기리는 것은 양 국가 간에 있어서 굉장히 중요한 일이라고 생각합니다.
Among the 5,324 Dutch soldiers who took part in the Korean War, 122 lost their lives, 645 were injured, and 3 never came home. 75 years have passed since the Korean War began, but we have not forgotten them. This is Hoengseong, situated roughly 108 kilometers from Seoul. 74 years ago, on February 5th, the Dutch Battalion arrived here and fought a fierce battle.
If you go to Hoengseong today, you will find a monument there in honor of the Dutch soldiers. And once a year we have a commemoration ceremony, a solemn commemoration ceremony to commemorate the Hoengseong battle.
As the ambassador just mentioned, each May a ceremony is held here to honor the Dutch soldiers who served in the Korean War. Every year, many people visit this place to remember the sacrifices of the Dutch soldiers and to honor them. And as we went through the photos from the memorial events held here, our team noticed an elderly veteran in some of them. On the uniform he was wearing was the patch of the Korean War Veterans Association of the Netherlands, along with the emblem of the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division, the familiar Indian head. Who might this person be? A hidden story from the Korean War, revealing another chapter in the ties between Korea and the Netherlands. Will continue in the next episode.